Hey there! Welcome back to Karen Strikes Again, where peace is temporary and drama is HOA certified. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone go radio silent after a long feud, only to suddenly reappear with a smile and a plate of brownies? No explanation, no apology, just sweetness out of nowhere, because that's exactly what happened to me. After months of battles, legal threats, public meltdowns, and viral neighborhood group posts, Karen vanished. No more HOA updates, no more passive-aggressive letters, nothing. Just blissful silence. I'll admit, I thought she was done, maybe even moved out. But then, last Saturday, a handwritten invitation appeared in my mailbox. You're invited to a community cookout hosted by Karen Thompson. Saturday at 6 p.m. Let's start fresh. No HOA letterhead, no threats, just a warm font and some clip art of hot dogs and balloons. I was suspicious, obviously, but I was also curious. Was this some elaborate trap, a PR move? Or, and I hate that I even entertained this, could Karen actually be trying to change? My wife and I debated it for days. I was leaning, absolutely not. She was leaning, let's bring wine and see what happens. In the end, we went. But what we walked into wasn't a cookout, it was a performance. And we were the unwitting audience to Karen's latest show. Stick around, because this one, it gets messy, fast. It was a perfect suburban evening. Golden sunlight, chirping birds, the smell of burgers on a grill. Kids played with chalk on the sidewalk. Folding chairs were arranged in neat circles. Paper lanterns hung from Karen's porch. For a moment, it looked like something out of a Hallmark movie, but I knew better. Karen stood at the center of it all, greeting people like she hadn't tried to have my property seized 3 weeks earlier. She wore a pastel blouse, soft curls in her hair, and a smile that could have fooled anyone except me. "Hi there," she chirped when we arrived. "I'm so glad you could make it." My wife, ever the diplomat, handed her the bottle of wine we brought. "Thanks for the invite." Karen nodded. "Tonight's about healing, letting go of the past, you know." I grinned, just enough to keep it polite. "Sure, clean slates." As we mingled, I noticed a few things. A stack of community suggestion forms on a table near the punch bowl, a poster that read, "Reclaiming Shared Spaces, a Neighborhood Vision," a few HOA board members hovering nearby, clipboard in hand. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a cookout, it was a soft launch for a new HOA policy, likely written by Karen herself. The same woman who once tried to fence off my yard was now serving burgers while rallying for shared access spaces. I walked over to the suggestion table. Most of the forms had pre-filled checkboxes like "Open up underutilized," "Private areas for community events," "Encourage a more unified, accessible neighborhood layout," "Promote HOA-led improvement projects on large lots." I flipped one over and found a printed paragraph on the back, something about implied consent and community-driven land use initiatives. I turned to my wife. "This isn't a cookout, it's a campaign." She nodded, and we just walked into her launch party. Karen was circulating like a politician at a fundraiser, collecting compliments, taking selfies, and offering second helpings of potato salad. Then she got on the mic. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I know the past few months have been eventful, but tonight is about moving forward together." She gestured toward me. "Even our more spirited neighbors have agreed to be here. And I think that says something wonderful about our potential as a community." Everyone clapped. My jaw tightened. Karen had just reframed me, the guy who had to call the cops on her, as someone who'd been difficult but was finally coming around. It was brilliant and disgusting, but she wasn't done. "Before you leave, I hope you'll take a moment to fill out a suggestion card. Your input is vital as we consider new uses for underutilized properties in our neighborhood, underutilized. That word again. Karen wasn't apologizing. She was rebranding her land grab, and worse, people were buying it. After Karen's little speech, I stepped away from the crowd and found a quiet spot near the back fence. I needed to breathe and think. She'd done it again. Wrapped manipulation in charm, spun a fake apology into a publicity stunt. And worse, she was gaining traction. I could see it in the faces of the neighbors, nodding, smiling, sipping punch while quietly buying into her new vision. My wife walked over with 2 cups of lemonade. "She's got the meeting out of her hand," I muttered. She handed me a cup. "Yep, but don't forget, you're not the only one who sees through her." That's when we spotted Greg. Greg is one of those old-school types, retired military, short grey buzz cut, speaks in complete sentences that sound like orders. He'd been in the neighborhood longer than anyone, and from what I'd heard, he didn't trust Karen any more than I did. He was standing by the suggestion table, arms crossed, watching everything like a hawk. I walked over. "Hey, Greg," I said. "Enjoying the show?" He smirked. "Let me guess. You got the same Fresh Start invite I did?" "Yep, with hot dog clip art and all." He leaned in. "She's not trying to turn a new leaf. She's trying to plant one in your yard." I laughed. "Exactly." Then Greg reached into his pocket and pulled out one of the forms from the table. He flipped it over and pointed at the fine print. "Read this." I did, and that's when the full scope of her plan hit me. The backside of the form wasn't just a survey, it was a legally worded petition. If signed, it would count as support for a proposed amendment to the HOA guidelines, one that would allow the board to repurpose unused or underdeveloped land within the neighborhood with community consensus. And what counted as underdeveloped land, you guessed it, my backyard. Karen wasn't just rallying good vibes, she was building legal ammo. Greg shook his head. "She's collecting signatures tonight. You give her a majority, she'll bring it to the next board vote. And if it passes, she'll have grounds to challenge your private use of that land." Again. I looked around. People were signing the forms without reading them. They thought it was just a community feedback thing. That's when I knew. I had to act. Fast. I turned to Greg. "Can you help me get everyone's attention?" He nodded once. "Say the word." We waited for the next lull in conversation. Then Greg did what he does best. Barked a clean, crisp command. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" Conversations died down. Forks dropped. Karen turned sharply toward us, her smile faltering. "Before you leave tonight," I said, stepping up beside Greg, "please take a moment to actually read what you're signing." I held up one of the forms. "This isn't just a suggestion, it's a petition. If you sign it, you're giving the HOA, and Karen, the right to challenge property boundaries, including mine." Karen quickly moved toward me. "That's not accurate. It's just an interest form." "No," I said, pointing at the fine print. "It's a backdoor policy change, and you didn't tell anyone that." A few neighbors stepped closer, taking the papers and flipping them over. Murmurs spread. One woman gasped. Karen's smile vanished. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "I'm protecting my home," I said, "and making sure no one else here gets blindsided." Now the mood had shifted. Karen's charm was wearing thin, eyes narrowed, brows furrowed. And the suggestion table? Suddenly a lot less popular. She stood there, frozen. The Queen without. A court, but deep down I knew something else. She wasn't done. She never is. After I exposed Karen's suggestion forms as a disguised petition, the mood at the cookout shifted fast. Conversations turned hushed, Neighbors clutched their cups tighter. A few people quietly folded their forms and tucked them into their bags, clearly regretting they ever picked them up. Karen, however, didn't panic. She pivoted. She smiled. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said, regaining some of that fake calm in her voice. These forms were never intended to change anything directly. They were just a way to gauge interest, nothing more. Greg wasn't having it. The fine print says otherwise. Karen waved it off. "Technical language, HOA templates, you know how it is." But her eyes were scanning the crowd, calculating, watching reactions. She wasn't flustered. She was regrouping. That's when she made her next move. "Well," she said, clapping her hands together, "I was going to wait until the end of the evening to make the announcement, but now seems like a great time." "Oh no. Starting next month," Karen continued, "I'll be running for HOA president." A few people gasped. One neighbor actually choked on their soda. Karen grinned wider. "It's time for a new kind of leadership. One that brings people together. One that listens to the community's needs. One that doesn't hide behind property lines and legal threats." Her eyes locked on me when she said that last part. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't a campaign anymore. It was a coup. She was weaponizing the cookout, the conflict, even her own public embarrassment, all to position herself as the victim-turned-hero, the great neighborhood unifier. I looked around. Some neighbors nodded. Some looked unsure. But a few, especially newer residents, seemed intrigued. Karen had just reframed everything. She wasn't stealing land. She was fighting for the people. And I was suddenly the uptight, property-obsessed loner. Greg leaned in. "She's good, I'll give her that." "She's dangerous," I muttered. Karen stepped down from the patio, walking through the crowd, shaking hands, making small talk. She was working the room like a seasoned politician. I couldn't let this happen. Not after everything. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder where I'd stored all the videos, photos, and emails. The footage of the workers trespassing, the cut lock, the recordings of her saying it's all been approved, even the screenshots of her email where she kindly reminded me that the HOA could take action if I didn't comply. I turned to Greg. "I think it's time the rest of the neighborhood saw this." He gave me a sharp nod. "Do it!" I quickly uploaded a trimmed video, would do less than 2 minutes, to the neighborhood group on Facebook. It was concise, clear, and damning. No narration, just clips, receipts, her own words. Then I posted it, with one line. "Before you vote for your next HOA president, please watch this." I didn't say her name. I didn't even mention the cookout. Let the video speak for itself. Less than 5 minutes later, I heard a chime from someone's phone. Then another. And another. A neighbor gasped. Someone said, "Is this real?" Someone else muttered, "She cut the lock?" Karen noticed the shift immediately. Her smile froze. She pulled out her own phone, and just like that, the tide turned again. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but now it was finally a fair fight. The videos spread fast. By the time we got home that night, I had over 30 notifications, comments, reactions, shares. People were tagging each other asking, "Is this real?" or "Did you see what Karen did?" I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't have to. The footage said it all. The trespassing, the construction, the manipulation. It wasn't edited to embarrass her. It was just the truth, in her own words. The next morning, Karen's house was quiet. No signs of life, no jog around the block, no clipboard patrol. At first, I thought maybe she was finally embarrassed enough to back off. Maybe this was the end. Then came the email. Subject: My side of the story. From Karen Thompson to entire HOA neighborhood. Mailing list. It was long, painfully long, a 1,000-word monologue filled with phrases like miscommunication, intentions misunderstood, and my personal favorite, an unfair and selective portrayal. She didn't deny what happened, she just reframed it. According to Karen, she was acting on behalf of the greater good, working on underutilized space, and blindsided by malicious editing meant to ruin her reputation. She ended with a flourish. If we let fear and negativity win, we lose the very spirit of our community. I will not be silenced by smear tactics. I remain committed to creating a neighborhood we can all be proud of. Signed, Karen Thompson. Candidate for HOA president. It was manipulative, calculated, and actually kind of effective. Within an hour, people were split. Some supported me, some said we were taking it too far. One comment stood out. She made mistakes, but does that mean she deserves public humiliation? And just like that, Karen had turned the narrative. Again, I won't lie. It got to me. For a second, I wondered if I'd gone too far. If maybe posting that video had been a step too aggressive. But then I remembered the lock, the workers, the arrogance, the threat to my property, my home. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. Karen wasn't sorry. She was just losing and didn't like it. But this time, I wasn't going to engage her emotionally. That's what she wanted. A feud, a spectacle. So instead, I did something unexpected. I stayed quiet. I didn't respond. I didn't send another email. I didn't argue online. Instead, I compiled everything I had, every message, every photo, every witness statement, and sent it directly to the official HOA board with a formal complaint citing misuse of HOA, communication channels for personal campaigning, and community manipulation through misinformation. A few days later, I got a response. The board had called an emergency closed-door meeting to discuss Karen's behavior and the possible violations of ethics rules. Things were finally moving behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Karen kept smiling in public, waving at neighbors like nothing had happened. But that smile, it didn't reach her eyes anymore, because now she knew I wasn't just defending my yard, I was defending the truth, and I wasn't alone. After the HOA board announced a closed-door meeting to address Karen's behavior, things around the neighborhood got strange. For someone who prided herself on being seen, Karen suddenly became very good at disappearing. No more cheery waves from her driveway, no more unsolicited reminder emails, no more surprise visits with suggestion forms, but just because she was quieter didn't mean she was done. One afternoon, I found a flyer in my mailbox. No envelope, no signature, just a bold headline. The truth they don't want you to see. It was a full-page defense of Karen, claiming she was being targeted by certain individuals with a vendetta. It called the HOA investigation a witch hunt, and my video a smear campaign edited out of context. I wasn't surprised, but I was annoyed. That's when something unexpected happened. My next-door neighbor, Jenna, who'd mostly stayed neutral through the drama, knocked on my door. "Hey," she said, "I got one of those flyers too." Let me guess, Karen's version of the truth? She rolled her eyes. Yep, but the thing is, she left one in every mailbox on the street. I frowned. That's a violation. HOA rules forbid unapproved distributions. Jenna smiled. And exactly. So I filed a complaint. Turns out I wasn't the only one. More neighbors, quietly, steadily, were starting to speak up. They'd been watching, listening, and while They hadn't taken sides before. They were tired of the manipulation, the weaponized charm, the fake unity. Karen's empire was cracking. Then came the nail in the coffin. One of the newer residents, an attorney named Liam, posted publicly in the neighborhood forum, "As a legal professional, I can confirm trespassing is trespassing. Manipulating community policy under the guise of unity is unethical, and using HOA resources for personal campaigns is grounds for removal." That post got more likes than anything Karen had ever shared. She responded, of course, a long paragraph about unfair targeting, community politics, and freedom of speech. But it was too late. Her tactics weren't working anymore. The neighbors weren't buying it, and for the first time in a long while, the street felt peaceful. No sideways glances, no tension at the mailbox, just people talking, actually talking, and not about garden plots or shared spaces. Karen was still there, still smiling, still pretending, but now nobody believed the smile anymore. The HOA board meeting happened on a rainy Thursday evening. It was closed to the public, but word spread fast. By Friday morning, an official notice was sent out via email to every resident. Following multiple complaints, documented incidents, and an internal review, the HOA board has voted to suspend Karen Thompson from her position as HOA vice chair and revoke her eligibility to run for presidency in the upcoming election. No long explanation, no drama. Just a quiet, clean decision. And it hit harder than any viral video ever could. Karen's reign wasn't just challenged, it was over. Later that afternoon, I saw her out front, dragging her trash bin to the curb. No sunglasses, no clipboard. No entourage, just her. She looked up as I walked by. For a brief second, our eyes met, and for the first time in all of this, she didn't glare. She didn't fake a smile. She didn't say a word. She just looked small, not defeated, not broken, but human. And maybe, just maybe, that was the one thing she never expected to feel in this neighborhood: humility. I didn't wave. I didn't gloat. I just kept walking. Because sometimes the loudest victory is silence. The weeks that followed were quiet. No more flyers, no more secret meetings, no more community initiatives disguised as personal vendettas. Karen kept to herself. She still waved at people, not as a leader, not as a figurehead, just a neighbor. And honestly, that was enough. Our backyard, still ours, still private, still peaceful. The cookouts returned, real ones, with laughter and no clipboards. Neighbors talked more, trusted more. It felt like a reset. Karen never apologized, not formally. But sometimes the absence of chaos is its own kind of apology. And if I learned anything from all of this, it's that standing your ground isn't about yelling the loudest. It's about refusing to be pushed around when it matters most. Because people like Karen, they don't always learn the first time, but when they do, the silence speaks volumes. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next chapter in the HOA and Karen saga. Got your own entitled neighbor story? Drop it in the comments. I read them all, and who knows, your tale might just inspire the next episode. This is Karen Strikes Again, where chaos meets consequences. See you next time.